Given the huge stresses and strains of living in our fast-paced and frenetic world, the idea of slowing down and living more simply is definitely an appealing thought. Allowing ourselves the time and space to live a simpler, more meaningful life not only sounds tempting, but would serve as a much-needed counterbalance in a world ravaged by the excesses of consumer living. After all, Jesus preached a simple life, suggesting that we imitate the birds of the air and the lilies in the field, who worry not about tomorrow or about what they eat or wear. But this worry-free and simple life may seem an almost impossible and perhaps abstract ideal, given the huge pressures we face by living in a consumer society. But the reality is that we all need to work for a living, pay our bills, and ensure that we have enough money to get by. Of course, we would all happily adopt a simpler and carefree lifestyle if only our financial stresses were taken care of, or perhaps if we somehow won the lottery. But storing up our treasures so that we can live a worry-free life is exactly what Jesus warns against. So, if we are not to store up treasures, then does this mean that to live simply, we should renounce all of our material possessions, live off-grid, surviving only from homegrown produce? And if so, then how can we all live up to this almost impossible ideal? It would seem that we need to understand what we really mean by living simply and how to live a simpler lifestyle in a more practical way. For living simply is not about renouncing all of our material possessions, but rather, living simply is more about re-evaluating our priority lists, where we make a conscious effort to live well within our means and to pursue what is meaningful in our lives, rather than being caught up in the trap of always wanting more and more. This can include spending time with family and friends, taking time to develop our relationship with God, spending more time out enjoying nature, and volunteering our time to help others in need. To live simply is to seek joy and happiness in the simple and more important things in life. This requires us to slow down and to re-evaluate what is meaningful in our lives. Often mistaken for material things, we all know deep down that what we treasure the most in our lives are the relationships we have and the connections we've made, where we are loved for who we are, the way we are. When we spend our time and energy pursuing these higher goals, which are both life-affirming and life-giving, we can escape the temptations of consumer living, driven by highly sophisticated marketing messages that continue to sell us a newer, shinier, or faster version of the things we already have. The overconsumption and waste that are the result of these highly persuasive marketing messages is wreaking havoc both to the environment and to the human family. We know our planet cannot sustain our growing need for more and more stuff, as well as our throwaway lifestyles that are the result of a hyper-consumer culture. Living simply allows us to become more awake and aware of the interior impulses driving us to consume way beyond our needs. When we are no longer driven by an inner compulsion to buy the cheapest, convenient, or status-driven items, we can begin to make consumer choices based on our values. This means spending more wisely, where we consider the interconnectedness of all things through our consumer choices, both on the environment as well as the workers and their families who hold a relationship with us through our purchases. When our shopping habits are driven by these values, we can have a positive impact on both the environment and the communities around the world. This is why living simply is not about checking out of ordinary life, but rather engaging with it more deeply. By slowing down, we can find the time to spend on building relationships, accepting each moment as a gift from God to be cherished, while becoming more present and attentive to one another. By learning to live in this way, we can find a way of life that is restorative, not just for ourselves, but for one another and for our planet. And given the harm our overconsumptive lifestyles have made, it would seem that following the teachings of Jesus to live a simpler lifestyle are needed now more than ever.